Good morning, Rotarians and guests. Good morning, Ron. Ron Strobel, the Sergeant at Arms. Our invocation this morning will be by the Reverend Joe Boisel.
Well, Amazing Grace is a hymn written by an Anglican priest, John Newton. This morning's invocation comes from the Anglican Book of Common Prayer. This one is a prayer for the country. Let us pray. Almighty God, who has given us this good land for our heritage, we humbly beseech Thee that we may always prove ourselves a people mindful of Thy favor and glad to do Thy will. Bless our land with honorable industry, sound learning, and pure manners. Save us from violence, discord, and confusion, from pride and arrogance, and from every evil way. Defend our liberties. Fashion into one united people the multitudes brought hither out of many kindreds and tongues. Endue with Thy spirit of wisdom those to whom in Thy name we entrust the authority of government, that there may be justice and peace at home, and that through obedience to Thy law we may show forth Thy praise among the nations of the earth. In the time of prosperity, fill our hearts with thankfulness, and in the day of trouble, suffer not our trust in Thee to fail. All which we ask through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Reverend Joe. To lead us in the pledge and four-way test this morning, back from vacation, Jim Ahern.
Glad to be here. Thanks for the snow Wednesday night to get welcome. I pledge allegiance
To the
flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Turning to the four-way test, I had a couple thoughts. March 4th here is going to be the four-way speech contest during this time, and I was thinking this great four sets of, or a four-way test. Right now there's probably a bunch of kids at Hudson and Western Reserve, I hope, all preparing, practicing with their parents or whatever. But when you multiply times all the Rotary clubs, there's tens of thousands of kids reviewing the four-way test and applying it to ethics in today's world. So pretty powerful. So think about it. First,
Is it the truth?
second,
Is it fair to all concerned?
third,
Will it build goodwill and better friendships?
fourth.
Will it be beneficial to all concerned?
Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Now to lead us in song, Dick Pearsall.
Joe, you put a pretty good bar up there on the songs today, but I would just say that what I want to think about today is love, and that's because of Valentine's Day, and I think we've got to think about Let Me Call You Sweetheart. So that's what we're going to sing today. Let me call you sweetheart, I'm in love with you. Put your heart into it. Let me hear you whisper that you love me too. Beat the love like glowing in your eyes so blue. Now some harmony. Let me call you sweetheart, I'm in love with you. I guess you're back, all right.
Thank you, Dick. And just a quick reminder before I turn it over to President-elect Joe. With the auction gala, oh my gosh, would the gala committee members please stay for just a moment after the meeting so we can take another picture. We were missing a person last week, and this week we're going to be missing a different one, but maybe we'll have to do some photoshopping or something. President-elect Joe Avella.
They blew up the spot where I had a...
Okay, thank you, Ron, and good morning, Rotarians. And yes, welcome to today's meeting. I think we'll have an informative and an interesting meeting. Allison is out today. She's still in, last week she was in Texas, this week she's in Boston. still taking care of her family, her daughters and her grandchildren. I'd like to call upon Chris Parker to introduce our guests.
Good morning, Rotarians and guests. We have a few guests with us today, and we'd like to give them a warm welcome. If they would please stand when I call their names. First, we have Dr. Bob Graves, owner of Hudson Chiropractic. I believe he's visiting us for a second time, and he's guest of Dexter James. Thank you, Dr. Bob. And then we have our speakers, the inventors of the barricade, Bill Kushwa and Dave Soulsby. And turns out, I was on Facebook last night, and one of my classmates from Madison High School, graduated in '84, actually posted something about another classmate, Dave Soulsby, congratulating him, you know, on the barricade. And so when he walked in this morning, I'm like, okay, the pieces are coming together. But thank you for joining us.
Okay, thank you, Chris. How about Jimmy? Where's Jimmy? We have some announcements and some things to do.
Thank you, Joe. And thank you, Bill Tobin. That was very, very nice. Last week, Ben Rexroad was not here, but I would like to mention that he joined our club in February of 2005. So that's 10 years ago, and his sponsor was Dave English, who now lives in Philadelphia. And then Liz Ramsey, who had all kinds of operations. She had a hip operation not too long ago. She's now had a knee operation on Monday. So we're passing around a card. Appreciate it if you would sign the card for Liz Ramsey. Provided I can find the pen.
Okay, thank you, Jimmy. Now, Duncan. Duncan has some announcements and Rotary history.
Bum, ba-dum, bum. Good effort, wrong song. Come on, guys. 2 quick announcements and then today's Rotary history. So, without further ado, good morning, fellow history buffs.
Good morning.
Not bad. First announcement. The Resource Development Committee is trying to wrap up the surveys so we can begin to form conclusions and offer recommendations on fundraising activities. The problem is that as of early this morning, we've only received 9 surveys. Now, those of you that remember Stats 101 from college will recall that we do not have anywhere near enough responses to gather a statistical sampling that would be at all relevant. So, folks, please pull down the survey that was emailed to you 2 weeks ago. Fill it out at your earliest convenience and email it back to me. If you need a hard copy for any reason, please see me before we all go home this morning, and I will provide that for you as soon as possible. Let's look at next Wednesday, which I believe is the 18th, as a deadline, and then we can stay on our timeline to get you a report. The second
quick question.
Yeah.
I think, not me, but some of the other members may have lost the email, so if you could send it out again.
I will resend the email.
Yeah, that wouldn't be me, but...
No. Yeah. Dun, 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 dun. That's $2. Second announcement references the upcoming gala. 2 weeks from this morning, that would be Wednesday, February 25th, we will receive our donor solicitation packets. Now, captain of captains, if you will, is Jim Ahern, and Jim is here, and that's good. And he will coordinate with team captains. But if you're not here on the 25th and therefore can't receive your kit with the list of gifts and contacts that you are in charge of soliciting, then Ron Strobel will find you. I know that because Ron found me last year at work less than an hour after I left my kit on the table. So there's nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. 2 weeks from today, let's get this thing rolling and let's raise a lot of money. And now, without further ado, the second in our series of presidents and Rotarians, Dwight David Eisenhower. Dwight D. Eisenhower was born on October 14, 1890 in Denison, Texas, and moved to Abilene, Kansas soon thereafter, the place he always called home. A stellar student and athlete, he studied at the West Point Military Academy from 1911 to 1915. Ironically, both he and his parents belonged to the Church of Brethren in Christ, which vehemently opposed war and any kind of violence. Eisenhower still became a professional soldier despite his denomination's philosophy. Eisenhower served with the infantry, became the number 3 leader of the Tank Corps, and rose to the rank of lieutenant colonel by the end of the First World War. He rose quickly through the ranks, becoming chief military aide to General Douglas MacArthur in 1933 and brigadier general in September 1941. Thanks, James. Shortly after the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor, Eisenhower was assigned to the General Staff, where he served as Assistant Chief of Staff under the Chief of Staff, General George C. Marshall. Although Eisenhower had no experience in active military action and never saw action, Marshall recognized in him organizational and administrative strength. It was his association with Marshall that brought Eisenhower to London in June 1942 as commanding general of the European Theater of Operations. He was also appointed Supreme Commander of the Allied Forces. It was during this time, unfortunately, that Eisenhower was compelled to discipline General George S. Patton, commanding him to apologize to 2 privates Patton had slapped in the face after calling them cowards and sharing some names with them that I can't repeat here. Eisenhower was in charge of planning and carrying out the Allied landings in Normandy, France, and the invasion of Germany. The first part of his plan, named Operation Overlord, was the largest seaborne operation in history. Starting on June 6, 1944, known as D-Day, 2.8 million Allied troops from 12 nations crossed the English Channel. After heavy fighting, the Allies breached the fortifications and pushed back the defending German forces. Because Eisenhower wasn't entirely certain that they would succeed, he kept in his pocket during the entire invasion a communique to his superiors, announcing the failure of the landings and accepting full responsibility if there had been a problem. 2 months later, the Allies reached Paris, and less than a year after that, Germany surrendered. Eisenhower ran for and won the 1952 presidential election with Richard Nixon as his vice president and brought the Republicans back to national power after 20 years. He was president from 1953 to 1960, becoming the first and only Army general to serve as U.S. president in the 20th century. Among his administration's most significant accomplishments were the ending of the Korean War, the development of the country's first interstate highway system, the founding of NASA, and 8 years of arguably the greatest economic prosperity in American history. Eisenhower's only misstep during his administration took place during his re-election campaign, when, fearing the power of Senator Joseph McCarthy, he refused to defend his friend and wartime superior, then Secretary of State General George C. Marshall, when McCarthy charged that Marshall was either a communist or under the control of communist agents. The first president to be limited to 2 terms, Eisenhower retired to his farm in Gettysburg. Among the many honors bestowed upon him as president and soldier were being named Time Magazine's Man of the Year twice and receiving the Distinguished Service Medal in World War I. He passed away March 28, 1969, of complications due to heart disease, having smoked 4 packs of cigarettes and drank up to 15 cups of coffee a day for most of his life. 3 quick quotes attributed to General and President Eisenhower. He said this to the Allied Expeditionary Force just before they launched. "You are about to embark on a great crusade. The eyes of the world are upon you, and the hopes and prayers of all liberty-loving people go with you." An intellectual is a man who takes more words than necessary to tell more than he knows. That's a classic. And finally, I hate war as only a soldier who has lived it can. Only as one who has seen its brutality, its futility, and its stupidity. Thank you.
Thank you, Duncan. If any of you have not been to Gettysburg and seen Eisenhower's home, it's pretty interesting. It's like they just left. They still have the pink and gray towels in the bathroom. You remember that at that time. So next is Dexter James talking about our some social events coming up.
We have 3 social events that I've planned for the club. The next one that is going to be here is going to be in the spirit of Black History Month, and thanks Phil for that amazing contribute to one of the songs that my grandmother loved to sing all the time. Kent State is putting on My Heart is the Drum. So if you'd like to help me and my family, because we already have our tickets, celebrate My Heart is the Drum, give me a call. I'll have sign-up sheets next week, so go home, talk to your family, wives, children, and grandchildren. If they want to go to something like this, please get in touch with me. We also have 2 other things that we're going to be putting on. One is Sesame Street. My kids love Sesame Street. They love Big Bird, so Sesame Street will be one of the things that we'll be putting on. So if you want to go to that, take your kids, grandkids, let me know. We'll have tickets for that one. That one's going to be in March. And then in April, we're going to have one more. C.S. Lewis, famous Christian, wrote this play, The Screen Take Letter. So very, very good play. That's for adults. So that's not something you want to bring your kids to. So let me know if you'd like to go to any of those things, and we'll get our tickets. We don't have a date for the last 2, because what I want to do is see how many people want to go and if we can come up with a date. So what I have is, I'm going to put this on our internet, and if someone wants to let me know when's a good time for us to go, then I'll pick a date. For the next one, My Heart is the Drum, it's the 28th. That date's been set. I already have the tickets lined up, so for the 28th of February, last day in February, Black History Month, can't miss that one. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Duncan. And
I'm still not Duncan.
Dexter. And that wasn't supposed to be funny. That wasn't.
Dexter, you gotta hang out more.
I know, man.
Dexter.
You mean Tanner?
Okay, I would like to call upon Gail Royster. Roseanne is out today, and Gail Royster is going to introduce our guest.
Thank you, President-elect Joe. Good morning, Rotarians.
Good morning, Gail.
Roseanne has very temporarily passed the baton. She wasn't able to be here today. Bill Cushwa first came to Hudson with his family in 1979. Bill was the first of 4 siblings to attend Western Reserve Academy. From WRA, he went on to major in business at the University of Notre Dame. Since Notre Dame, Bill has spent the better part of his adult career working with children, both professionally, as a mentor, or as a member of various foundations focused on the education, health, and safety of children. Bill recently completed a long term on the Akron Children's Hospital Foundation Board. Bill sits on the advisory board of the Haslinger Center for Pediatric Palliative Care at Akron Children's Hospital, the Community Leadership Council for Akron Children's in Mahoning County, and 2 private family foundations on making secondary education possible for students in the Youngstown area. Here in Hudson, Bill has served the community chairing 2 ad hoc committees on rezoning challenges, serving on the Charter Review Commission, and championing Lemonade Day From the very beginning in Northeast Ohio to the point that the city of Hudson was recognized nationally for this youth entrepreneurship program. It is through working with elected officials, community leaders, and school administrators on student safety and security issues in the wake of both the Virginia Tech and Chardon High School shootings that Bill developed the basis for Barricade. It was an idea that simply could not let him rest. With a daughter and son-in-law teaching in the public schools in Orange County, Florida, a sister teaching in New York City in a college, and his youngest children still in school here in Hudson, this work is much more than just a job. This morning, Bill will give us a little more insight into his most recent initiative, National School Control Systems and the invention Barricade. Let's have a warm Rotary welcome for Bill Kushwa.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. It's a tough morning to follow Phil Tobin, let alone Amazing Grace and Dwight D. Eisenhower. You're set up for quite a challenge. I want to recognize Dave Soulsby, who was introduced as a guest as well. Dave's a Hudson resident, a good friend of mine for years. His kids go to school with my kids at Seton Catholic School. Dave and I met because of our wives. When you're in Hudson and your wives go through Newcomers Club, the husband get dragged along to certain events, and eventually it's like, hey, Bill, go talk to that guy over there, or Dave, go talk to that guy, and ever since then, Dave and I have been fast friends. I'm going to work through some slides this morning, but try to set out three specific things to touch on for you. I'm going to talk a little bit about the need for this invention to go out and try to find a solution, the solution itself, and then talk a little bit about where we've done in the past 2 years. So I'm hoping that this can work for me. Again, we talked about having a sobering conversation about war. Now Dave and I have this sobering conversation on a daily basis with lots of folks across the country and Canada, and getting some inquiries now beyond our borders. I put some statistics up. I'd be happy to share this with you, so I'll leave my card with anyone if they wanted to actually get this presentation emailed to them. But just within the last 13 years, and falling short of most recent active shooter events in the U.S. alone, there have been 160 incidents, 1,043 casualties along the way, and that doesn't include the shooters themselves from that standpoint. When I was sitting on the home committee in Hudson and contributing there from Seton Catholic School standpoint, and I was working with Steve Farnsworth, superintendent at the time, we were talking about these broader issues, and then when Chardon High School shooting came in so close to home, all of our efforts here redoubled from that standpoint to talk about what we can do. Are we prepared? We have conversations still today where someone will say, it's not going to happen here, we're fine, this is Hudson, or this is wherever. And if you start to look at, probably would have said that if you lived in Littleton, Colorado, you probably would have said that if you lived in Newtown, Connecticut, you probably would have said that if you were sending your girls off to an Amish schoolhouse in Pennsylvania. Not going to happen here. So does that mean once we know that there's an issue, and for all the insurance guys here in the room, once you know that there's a risk and an issue, we need to take some steps and action, have a plan to respond to some of these things that may happen, but you hope that don't happen. Again, only going through 2013, according to the FBI, you can see a trend here as far as casualties and events. When you go to 2012, the numbers are a little bit concerning for me in terms of where they got to that point, but Chardon High School happened. Anniversary of the Chardon High School shootings is this Friday, 2012, February. We started talking about what should we do, sketching kind of the basis for this solution that I'll talk about in a second. Sat on the shelf for a while, but then that same year, 2012, December, Sandy Hook shootings occurred, and we said, hey Dave, we got to do something about this. I think I've got the basis for what we need to accomplish. Let's get our heads together and figure out where we can go from there. And ever since Christmas break 2012, Dave and I have been working on this on pretty much on a daily basis, nights, evenings, weekends as well. And talk a little bit about some of these, and if you're just selling a widget, it's great to talk about vertical markets. When you're talking about a life and death safety issue, it's sobering and sad, but really this is a chart, again, of the breakdown of it. There's a lot of focus because of Sandy Hook on education, but the commerce situation, a UPS shooting, a FedEx shooting, workplace violence, domestic violence that spills over into the workforce, government buildings. We have sold to and worked with county courthouses and government buildings at this point. The number of phone calls that have come our way, and especially in light of some recent events, St. Louis and the Paris shootings in France, we're getting calls from houses of worship, churches, synagogues. The very nature of a church is supposed to be open and welcoming, and that makes them a difficult place a lot of times to secure, and a difficult place to have a conversation about safety and security as well. So I'm just going to talk about the need for action and shifting to have a tool in the hands of that person in their office or in their school. Majority of these events happen and are over in minutes. So when we talk about seconds count, it really does mean seconds count. More than 40% of them were over before law enforcement arrived. Most of the time the shooter actually commits suicide also before officers arrive. So in the communities we talk to, and it's a challenge sometimes up and down this 271 corridor because we have this sense, our police department's right down the street. I mean, they're gonna be here. But if there's a shot going off every 15 seconds, 3 minutes is a long time, folks, and things like that. So we've talked to schools then who are much more remote than that, where they say, hey, our sheriff's office might get here in 35 minutes. We talked to state troopers in Alaska who said, we'll get on a seaplane, we'll get there in about 2 days to that school. So we have the benefit of a fabulous police force here, don't get me wrong, but again, time is of the essence. Average shooter event, and it still lingering in about that 12-minute range, most of them occurring in about the 7 to 8 minutes. Average law enforcement time is increasing a great deal because of lessons learned at Sandy Hook. First responding police officer sat in the parking lot, ran the license plate of the active shooter's car before entering the building and waiting for additional folks to come. Now it's something's happening at the school, I'm going right into it myself, I'm not waiting for backup. Very sobering, again, the Virginia Tech shootings, for the 30 that were killed, other than 2 that were in a dormitory, those took place in just really 11 minutes within that one school building. So when we talk, it's transitioned really from the Steve Farnsworth conversation to a Phil Herman conversation, talking about what do we need to do what's a tool we can give to our staff and our faculty. It's really now shifting to what am I going to do as a teacher if these kids are in my care. We're looking at a shift in terms of the term first responder. My brother's a battalion chief in a fire department, typically would refer to him as a first responder. In this new paradigm, a lot of folks can be first responders. So something bad occurred right here and some member walked into this building, somebody else is going to have to spring into action. So over the course of the last 3 years, lots of different protocols have come into play. Run, hide, fight, avoid, deny, defend, ALICE training. They all carry with them one aspect of it. If I can get out, get out. If I can get away, that's great. But if I am not sure that I can evacuate either myself, and it's even more challenging if I'm taking care of 25 kindergartners, I'm not going to quickly do anything with 25 kindergartners. So this concept of hiding in place, locking, barricading a door, adding some other impediment to protect myself. Again, this avoid, deny, defend. The deny comes into the middle part here. Keep distance between yourself and the source, create barriers to prevent or slow down a threat from getting to you. Those were all aspects that were going into our thought process and our basis for what could we do to improve our situation here in the schools. U.S. Department of Homeland Security, hide an area out of view, block entry to your hiding place, lock the doors. That's where we started to talk about this interesting concept of blocking and locking, not just locking a door, the recommendations are to do something additional to just relying on the lock of the door. So we're doing this, we haven't developed this device yet, but we're going to training sessions where a bunch of folks in a room like ourselves here this morning are going through these trainings, and this is what they were doing, and this is what they're still teaching in certain places. So I have an outward swinging door, and I've got a garbage can and a couple tables for doors that are going to swing out and away from those garbage cans. That was their response mechanism. Again, classroom setting, and a bunch of adults are very proud that they went through some training. Hopefully you got a really tall guy, a door closure that's effective, I got a belt I can take off, I can linger in front of the door even though they can get shot through the door. Like the belt coming off and holding the door handle here, and a bunch of other adults assisting. Same concept, teachers, smaller kindergarten classroom. This is in Ottawa, Canadian Parliament, towards the end of last year. This is what Parliament was doing for the main entry doors into their space. Again, these were concepts where we said, boy, I think we could be smarter as a solution here to get people away from the door and not just sit there and say, well, I really hope this works. So I'm going to rattle off some of the things we looked at to start with. We wanted something to deploy quickly, something that gets you away from the door very quickly as well. We spent a great deal of time with fire code, code compliance, and building codes. We want a door, hopefully to function as a door is intended. We want easy egress. You want to have ADA accessibility. You don't want any more than 15 pounds of force or pressure on a normal customary operation to get out of the door. We likened it, it's akin to a fire extinguisher, so this is really coming out of Hudson, Ohio, the next wave. So we've become accustomed to pole stations, fire extinguishers. We go through in-service trainings in our schools and workplace about how to use an AED. So this is really kind of the next evolution of commercial building safety. We didn't want an instance where I'm screwing around on one side of the door, even though I've got this door shut. I want it quickly and quietly. I don't want that commotion, the noise. We also wanted to guide first responders and school administration, so there's some element to it to guide them. I needed something that's going to be lightweight. Typically in the school setting, K through 8 for sure. Lots of women in our school over at Seton, lots of vertically challenged women, about this big. So we didn't need something large, heavy in that regard, but we wanted something of superior strength. We wanted to allow for easy evacuation. So if I'm going to shelter in place, but I've got 16 desks and chairs, and all of a sudden it's like, man, now we got to shift over, we got to get out of here. Now I have to take all those 16 doors and desks and things out of the way. So we wanted to move that in that direction. And as a fundraiser, I wanted to make sure it was affordable for all organizations. We didn't want to have life and safety be linked to, well, we can give it to the wealthiest school district and we'll stop there. So this is the product now, the product that's in production, the product that we're selling. If you like an evolution of products, there's several steps between this made in the garage to where you look at the piece that's on the picture there. But essentially the same elements are in place. So this is not worthy of Ron Strobel's craftsmanship here. But Ron, when I thought about it, it's like, I'm going to go out in the garage one night and see what I have of scraps lying around and work on this. So I'm sure you'll want to take a look at this. So again, we have now developed this device. We have shipped this now to 100 institutions in 18 states. We've just ordered, and we're going to be making another 5,000 units this spring. Probably before the end of March, we'll be making another 5,000 units, and then come April and May, we'll be ordering another 5,000 units to be made. Lightweight, superior strength. Impact modified polycarbonate, injection molded in Macedonia, Ohio, by the same company that makes Rydell football helmets for college and pros. We've done same guys are doing concussion testing and impact testing. You can run those through those tests and more. Quickly, effectively deploys in seconds. It's not mounted to the door. It's really an aftermarket piece, so instead of me adding these tables and chairs, it's sitting there close by. The external notification panel, that reflective red and white stripe. So if I'm in a lockdown and something bad's happening, the good guys are showing up, I'm working my way down a hallway, I'm gonna look real quickly down a hallway and see which doors are secure, which doors are not. I'm gonna focus my attention on a door I might not see this on first. I'll circle around to these other doors later, about accelerating time to sweep a building. If I am not in a lockdown, so that's in a lockdown, if I'm not in a lockdown and I'm a school administrator or an office administrator, and I see one of those things on, I'll know immediately. I didn't want something that could be deployed top secret, hidden from view. Somebody could slip into a room and just flip a switch or drop a pin into the floor, and we never would know that that door was reinforced. And the cost-conscious part of it. So all of this per door, $49 to our clients now. Mentor High School, first high school, Northeast Ohio for us to get it. This is Susie Chin, one of the unit principals at deploying it in Mentor. The larger picture to the right is at the Margaret Clark Morgan Foundation, and you can start to see this, how it's starting to line up as, okay, I got a fire extinguisher, we've got AEDs. This is the device that if I need to create a safe room, I can create a safe room, but hopefully it hangs on the wall as an insurance policy. So this kind of goes into our, if you're in a school setting, I would typically add, we know how to, we're learning how, hopefully everybody's been trained in how to use an automatic external defibrillator, the fire extinguisher. Schools have a lot of experience now with EpiPens as a safety issue for allergies, and barricade takes you to that hostile intruder, active shooter. We're fortunate enough, so even after less than a year in production and delivery to clients, we received recognition from Campus Safety Magazine this past fall as the best physical security equipment. One of the things that Dave and I are very proud about is, we grew up in Ohio, I grew up in Youngstown. Darn it, we're going to make this thing in Ohio. And if we're not making it in Ohio, we're going to make it in the USA type thing. But if we can't make it in Ohio, then I kind of failed my grandparents. And my one grandfather would be extremely mad. So after this long journey of trying to figure out how we're going to produce this, where we're going to make this, is it going to be made out of aluminum, is it going to be made out of steel? As we've shifted over to highly engineered polymer design and injection molding, it turns out that closer to Dave's house, but not too much further from my house, from Hudson, Design Molded Plastics is in Macedonia, right off of Twinsburg Road, Bavaria Road, if you're coming off of Twinsburg Road there. When Hattie's Cafe was closing downtown, I got a chance to meet with Dennis and with Dottie from Hattie Larlam, and trying to figure out a way to save Hattie's from closing to begin with, but got a conversation with them about vocational training and what they're doing and the value of the Hattie's Cafe experience. And Dave and I were in the early stages. I said, I think I might have something here for you. So after we got going and we needed some sub-assembly and we needed some shipping and some order fulfillment, we're in production. We have 20 to 25 developmentally disabled adults in Canal Place in Akron who are doing sub-assembly work for us. So we haven't seen any money, but we're paying for some other folks to do some great things. So all of a sudden we go to this triangle after this long journey and the folks. So everything that is being shipped across the country is coming from this triangle, from Hattie's, Design Molded, and coming out of Hudson. This is at their older facility. Because of us, they moved to an actually larger facility to do the production. So the adherence of the labeling, the anchor pin and the alignment stoppers that go into the packaging, and then the repackaging at the other end of the line to ship these out happen at Hattie Larlam. The Design Molded Plastics operation that's just up the road for us. When we're in production, they can make one of our devices every 60 seconds. They'll run 3 shifts a day, 6 days a week. Yeah, so I'm just going to conclude this with this and entertain any questions either during the session or after the session. We are not saying that this is the magic solution, that you can do nothing else. As you've heard from us in the community for a long time, from Phil, from board members, it's a complex process. If you see something, say something. If you have the community hotlines, we want to communicate, we want to have that be available for folks. Pick your head up off the smartphone and pay attention to what the neighbor's doing, the kids doing from that standpoint. Listen. I think the communication part is, yeah, we're selling a widget, but we'll have a conversation more often than not with folks just about good protocol and how to communicate with your kids. If I'm a coach, have a moment at the beginning of the season to talk about, hey, if something's bothering you, you know, and you don't feel comfortable, not everybody loves a teacher, right? The teacher should have this conversation, but there might be a trusted advisor, it might be the chess club, it might be my football coach, it might be someone else, that we've all got to be much more aware to have that conversation. Are you worried about yourself or you're worried about a teammate? So that's really it in a nutshell. I've got a couple devices here to demonstrate, to show you. We've done some of our own Mythbusters. We have hit this thing. We have battered it. Dave, as a graduate from Madison, Madison was going to tear down an old elementary school building, and so we got in before they tore it down. I was trying for the life of me to try to get into the YDC property, even though it was slated for demolition, and they were worried that we might do some damage to a building that was going to be so we had to drive to Madison to test it. But we got some devices here that have also been shot. AK-47, 9mm, 12-gauge shotgun to show, because someone will say, well, it's just a 2-pound piece of plastic. The polymers and the knitting together of that polymer does exactly what we intended to do. It turns into a little bit of Swiss cheese, but is essentially intact. The cool thing about the Madison conversation that Dave had and the coverage we got this week from Madison is it's led to things like, well, he was talking to the media there. I was at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base talking to the Air Force about military installations and things like that. So we can clone 2 more or 3 more of us. We've got those type of opportunities, but I think we're both proud to say that it originated here with Bob Carter in the fire department's input, Jerry Barnes, Steve Farnsworth before Phil Herman's input, and then all the good people and even the discussions with Tom Murdo about, okay, Tom, I got this thing, it's looking a lot plastic, where do we go from here? So the resources and the availability we've always talked about here in Hudson really help spur this on and grow. And I don't want to take up too much more of your time on this issue, and I'm not going to sing for you. Yes?
Joe just asked me how many doors we had at this school. I don't know that. I can tell you the budget, but I don't know how many doors. Do you remember how many?
That's good, because I can't tell you the budget. I can tell you 625 units were ordered for Hudson. So when you're looking at a school, it could be a rule of thumb of 1 for every 10 to 15 students, might fall into range. You might want to have 1 for every faculty member, but you start to deem places that are safe havens or shelter-in-place locations. So you're thinking classrooms initially, but it could be a nurse's office, an assistant principal's office, a conference room, even a large closet, a larger area where it's like, well, I couldn't get to there, but I can get from the lunchroom into a smaller confined space. History has shown us that people have survived by being in these types of locations. So 625 were delivered to Hudson. Mentor's initial order was 500, although we think we're going to get another 500 for Mentor.
Hey, Bill, thanks for your presentation. I was thinking about, even before you brought up the piece being shot apart or trying to be shot apart. So it'll all stay together if somebody's trying to take shots at the red and white portion of it. And that's on the outside of the door, correct?
Correct.
So, and Catherine can probably answer this, the doors open towards the red and white part of the device, or do they open inward?
It's both.
Both?
Typically in a large assembly area, your doors are supposed to move outward. We don't want a ton of people rushing towards the door in a fire and have an inward swinging door. But even new construction schools, we were down in Dayton, Cincinnati this past week, brand new school, 2002, whole bunch of inward swinging classroom doors, but it's designed to be one solution. Dave and I didn't want to create, okay, I'm in Mrs. Smith's class, I have to do this, but now we've moved over into the art room, I got to do something different. We're trying to come to a one solution, fits most.
So it'll stay intact. It's tested that it'll stay intact from gunfire. I was thinking if it was shot apart on the outside and the door swung in, the pin would still prevent. But
right.
If it moves out,
Yeah. So so even on the piece, if you want to spend the time unloading a clip into this piece, I'd rather have you do that than shoot something else.
Yeah, that's true. So it's a time issue.
Because you go back to that 5 minutes, 8 minutes, it's time, if you want to spend all that time gnawing on that one door. But the 12-gauge shotgun at 24 inches maybe, Dave, we didn't do it. We had someone who was less smart than we were shoot at a very close range. And it's funny when you say, boy, it would be interesting to see how it's shot. How many people raise their hands like, I'll shoot it for you. Okay. But it does exactly want to. Really, you have to have only a functional piece, Rich. Just, there's a lot of real estate here, but really, we just have to have about a sliver of this intact. And so it's going to be really hard to shear to the point where that has totally come so clean that my shooting at this device has made it open. There's more real estate than is really necessary. Bill?
Bill, I don't know whether I remember when you were introducing yourself and your connection, but many of you may not realize this, but Bill was president of Seton. Was it president or chairman of the board?
I was chairman of the board.
Okay, so here's a guy who's had experience in this thing, so I'd like to connect that dot, because I think that drives some of your passion, Bill. Second thing, is there a clip that has to be, is there a hole that has to be drilled in the floor? Does that fit in a sleeve?
It doesn't fit into a sleeve. We get
Just a
questions
drop,
all the
just a
time.
drop.
It's really, there are a few instances where we're probably going to have to use a sleeve on a much, much older building in a wood frame construction,
Yeah.
but majority of, this is designed for commercial use. Someone will always come up, hey, this is great, I want to put it with my house or my apartment. There's a lot of other things you can do in a residential setting. So this is really a commercial institutional application. Majority of our commercial institutional applications, the subflooring is concrete. I got a 5/16 inch hole, I got a stainless steel pin into that concrete. Now, if you're, I told this to a school the other day, if that door is having an onslaught 6 hours a day for 6 days a week, is that concrete going to hold up? Probably not, but if you're having that type of onslaught, you've got other issues that might barricade. So it's all designed for that. Is long can it withstand that force?
From a practical viewpoint, how easy is it to find that hole? It's a black unit you're looking through. How easy is it to find that hole and drop that pin into it?
Sure, so we provide, there's one alignment stopper, there's a little nub that goes on the door.
Okay.
The nub on the door, basically, I slide this 12 inches on, it hits that nub, I've closed the door, it has now centered itself over top of this anchor hole. So it's not this, holy cow moment, I'm missing this hole, where's this thing going? We also funneled this hole from a larger hole at the outside to a tighter pinch point below. So again, heat of the moment, muscle memory, not a lot of fine muscle. Like, I'm hearing stuff, I gotta make this happen. It's really a couple seconds and an easier drop. I'm not trying to be so surgically precise to try to find that anchor hole.
I have one third comment. If I buy another antique car, can I use this to keep my wife from breaking into me?
Yeah, and she can use it to keep you locked in the house.
Is there any downside to it where students have taken it and barricaded themselves into the classroom and the teachers can't get in? Is there any downside to any of that stuff?
Yeah, so we get the question a lot. There's usually someone who, we'll just say Dennis the Menace as the best case scenario and not the worst case scenario. But it's usually that same kid who locks the bathroom stall, crawls out from underneath the bathroom stall and thinks, that's hilarious, I locked everybody out of using the bathroom. The external notification means I can't put it on without someone knowing in the hallway, so that was a concern of mine. So if I decide I want to use it for nefarious purposes outside of that, he couldn't do it in a top secret manner. We provide every school with a tool that can default this from the outside, from the door. So if I see this and I'm not in a lockdown, from the time it takes to get to the main office back up to here, we can disengage this device. We don't make a big deal about it on the website. We don't want to make a big deal, hey, there's a way to get around it, right? Yeah, but we do provide it.
Good.
I was just going to add that when we looked at this, Bill, the patience of Job, because literally the questions you're asking here, I think probably everyone up, Phil, the school board, every principal has asked those questions, which is great, and they really have thought of everything. And I'll just say from the point of view of the schools, we had a big meeting of the town and all safety forces and everybody about safety after Newtown, and a lot of suggestions, give every teacher a Glock. It's a whole other discussion of whether we want that many guns in the school. And another one of, gee, we should have a police officer in every school. And the police chief said, that'd be great, but there's just not enough money in the world. And this is what's called a high impact, low risk occurrence. So really, the investment in barricade, a more passive type of security, I think the entire cost of this, and they were very generous with us, is less than what it would cost for one policeman at one school for 1 year. So it was a very good investment, and it's as was mentioned, it's in addition to a whole lot of other practices and training that's going on. So it's not the only piece of the program, but it's a big piece of it. So the schools are very happy. I guess what I'm hoping is you have a barricade to keep the state from coming in and taking our funding, but that's a story for another day.
Much longer distance.
Yeah.
Just a question, when you visit schools, are most of the shooters, one, students of the school, and second, how often do they, it seems like in Virginia and some other places, they spend time in cafeterias or in one's school classroom.
Right.
So what do you say to
So in a school shooting, the majority of the time they are a student, but in a workplace shooting, it could be, I just fired a guy in FedEx or from some capacity. It could be a graduate of the school, it could just be a crime of opportunity. So the Amish schoolhouse shooting, obviously no connection. I'm gonna come off the highway, I'm gonna go shoot up the school in that regard. Again, there's a whole complex, there's a myriad number of things. If I knew that I was gonna be attacked in 10 minutes, we could do a lot of things before that guy showed up in 10 minutes. And the sad part is, some bad event probably is going to happen, and what Dave and I say is, we're going to stop a bad event from becoming much, much worse, but we're not going to necessarily stop the bad event.
That's right.
In a hospital setting or in an open cafeteria or gymnasium setting, what we're trying to do is get into that, where's that spot, where are they going to go? If that's not the option, where else are they going to go? And where's that other safe room that they can get to quickly?
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Joe, 2 seconds.
Thank you, Bill, for that very informative and unfortunately a very necessary invention here. James Field has an announcement.
Okay. Do it up here, so be quick. Again, thanks on behalf of the school board to Barricade. It's a great, like I said, it's one of the really good investments that we've done. I handed out forms to be a participant in the Relay for Life. A couple things, I've actually pre-filled it out. The hard parts you have to fill out is your first name, last name, home address, city, state, and zip. And then a couple questions about, you can answer all the questions, but I circled the ones we're looking for. If you are a survivor, or if you're currently fighting cancer, they want to recognize people, and so they're hoping they would indicate that as well. Now, in terms of, in the past, there was a fee, which was all 100% donation, but not this year. So if you fill it out, then you'll be part of the Hudson Rotary team, and I'd love to have everyone fill it out, even if you're not going to be here. And the event takes place on May 30th. Just want to, if you can be there, that is fantastic. And if you want to donate, Dick already gave a very generous donation, so thanks for that. Absolutely, obviously, this is all the money, 100% goes to the Cancer Society. But if you could fill this out and we could have huge participation, that would be great. And if you are able to make the event, that would be great as well. That's it. Thank you.
Hey, John, how much did you raise last year, just for information?
Oh, I got to get that number. It was 700. It was a pretty good amount. I will
okay.
get that gathered and get that presented. Thanks.
Okay.
You lost it. Okay, thank you, James. I would like to thank our greeters today, Joe Boycell and Phil Tobin, our AV crew, Larry Santon, Tom Page, Jimmy Sutphin, James Field, Ron Barnhouse, and handling the video today for the third or fourth time, Emily McClaps from our Service Learning Group. Next week's meeting, February 18th, speaker is Don Padgett. He's the director of the Bridgestone Invitational. So if you have some golfing buddies, want to bring them to listen, I think that would be an excellent opportunity. Drawing for the Rotobuck, today's drawing, the payout is $15 and the jackpot is $302. That would make a nice Valentine's Day gift. I will let Bill draw out the winning ticket. Okay, so Bill Drew, the last 4 digits, 0528.
Guess I gotta keep my date.
And it's Craig.
Sure, the foundation. Come on, Craig.
I do want to donate this, though, to our fine master, to ensure that we have a good basis for next week's drawing, or whatever it is.
You'll probably go out to lunch on it.
$15.
$2 for
Thank you.
band.
Thank you. Okay, thank you.